The glass jar of organic marinara sauce shattered against the linoleum of aisle 4 with a sound like a gunshot. Eleanor Whitmore didn't flinch at the noise. She only stared at her trembling hand as if it belonged to a stranger. Around her, the midday rush of the high-end Manhattan grocery store swirled like a predatory current. A businessman in a tailored suit stepped over the red puddle, clicking his tongue in annoyance without glancing up from his iPhone. A young mother yanked her toddler away, muttering something about the elderly and crowded spaces. Eleanor, once the steel magnolia of the Whitmore real estate empire, felt herself shrinking. She was 82, draped in a vintage Chanel coat that smelled faintly of cedar and forgotten galas. But to the world, she was merely an obstacle. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to the air. My grip." She reached for a paper towel from a nearby display, her knees popping with a dry, painful protest as she knelt. The world began to tilt. The fluorescent lights hummed with a sudden, deafening intensity, turning the bright labels of soup cans into a psychedelic blur. Her heart, a weary engine that had survived the Great Depression and the cutthroat boardrooms of the 80s, skipped a jagged beat. Thump, thump. Pause. Thump. She stayed on the floor, not because she couldn't get up, but because she had suddenly realized that if she died right there, between the pasta and the imported oils, the store manager would likely be more concerned about the liability than the loss of a soul. Her cell phone buzzed in her pocket. With a surge of adrenaline, she fumbled for it. Daniel, her son, the CEO of Whitmore Holdings, the boy she had stayed up with through 3 bouts of pneumonia, the man she had handed a billion-dollar legacy to on a silver platter. "Daniel?" she gasped, her voice thin. "Mom, can't talk long." The voice was crisp, caffeinated, and entirely devoid of warmth. "I saw the alert from the estate accountant. Why did you veto the sale of the Hamptons Annex? We discussed this. It's a liability, and the property taxes are eating into the trust's quarterly growth." "Daniel, I'm at the store. I fell. Or I'm falling. I feel very strange. Dear." There was a heavy sigh on the other end. The sound of a man looking at a Rolex and seeing a scheduled inconvenience. "Mom, you have a driver. Why are you at the store? You're probably just dehydrated. Listen, Rebecca is in town for the Fashion Week gala, but she's swamped. I'll have my assistant call your primary care doctor to schedule a checkup for next Tuesday. But about the annex, I need your digital signature by 5. I don't care about the annex." "Daniel, I think I'm having a stroke. You're being dramatic because you're lonely." "Mom, we've been through this. I have a board meeting. Love you. Bye." The line went dead. The hum of the lights grew louder. Eleanor leaned her head against the cool metal of the shelf. The steel magnolia was finally breaking. "Ma'am? Oh my God. Ma'am, don't move." The voice wasn't Daniel's. It wasn't the polished, Ivy League lilt of her daughter, Rebecca. It was soulful, melodic, and laced with genuine panic. A pair of hands, strong, warm, and smelling faintly of dishwater and citrus, reached under Eleanor's arms. "I'm okay," Eleanor lied, the gray veil of a blackout descending over her eyes. "You are definitely not okay. You're white as a sheet," the voice said. Eleanor looked up. A young black woman in a faded green waitress uniform was kneeling in the marinara sauce, heedless of the stain spreading across her khakis. She had a name tag that read Amara. "I'll call an ambulance," Amara said, her thumb already flying over a cracked screen on her phone. "No," Eleanor gripped the girl's wrist with surprising strength. "No hospitals. Just help me to the bench. Please. I don't want to be alone in a room full of machines." Amara looked at the clock on the wall. She was clearly supposed to be somewhere. Her shift at the diner across the street started in 5 minutes. And in New York, 5 minutes late was a firing offense. She looked at Eleanor. The expensive coat, the lonely eyes, the trembling hands. And she made a choice that Daniel and Rebecca hadn't made in a decade. Forget the bench, Amara said, hoisting Eleanor up. The hospital is 2 blocks away. We're walking. And I'm holding on to you. You aren't going anywhere alone. As they shuffled toward the exit, Eleanor felt the coldness of her own life more sharply than the wind outside. She was a billionaire, a titan's widow, a mother of 2 success stories. Yet, the only person holding her upright was a stranger with a cracked phone and a stained uniform. "What's your name, honey?" Eleanor whispered as they reached the sidewalk. "Amara. And you?" Quote. Eleanor hesitated. If she said Whitmore, the world would change. The doctors would bow. The vultures would circle. She looked at the girl's kind, tired face. "I'm just Nora," she said. "Just an old woman who forgot how to breathe." The smell of Amara's apartment was a revelation to Eleanor. It didn't smell of expensive Joe Malone candles or the sterile, lemony sharpness of a hired cleaning crew. It smelled of slow-simmered garlic, laundry detergent, and old books. It smelled like a home that was actually lived in. Amara had practically carried Eleanor up the 3 flights of stairs after the hospital had poked, prodded, and ultimately dismissed the elderly woman with a fainting spell. The doctor hadn't even looked Eleanor in the eye, noting her age and Nora pseudonym before scribbling a referral for a specialist, but Eleanor had seen the look on the technician's face during the quick ultrasound. She knew the steel magnolia had rust in the gears. Late stage, aggressive, and utterly indifferent to her bank balance. "Sit," Amara commanded, gently pushing Eleanor into a mismatched armchair covered in a colorful knitted throw. "I called my manager, told him I had an emergency. He yelled, but, well, he always yells. You look like you're about to float away." "Nora, I've cost you your wages," Eleanor whispered, her hands tucked into the sleeves of her Chanel coat. "I can pay you back. I have." Quote. "Stop it," Amara laughed. A warm, throaty sound as she moved into the tiny kitchenette. "You think I help you for a tip? My mama raised me in Georgia. You see a neighbor stumbling. You catch him. That's just the rent we pay for living on this earth." Eleanor watched her. Amara's movements were fluid and tired. She was humming a gospel tune under her breath while she chopped carrots. This girl had nothing. Her entertainment center was a stack of paperbacks and a radio. Yet she was giving away the only thing she had. Her time. "Amara," Eleanor said, her voice cracking. "The doctor. He gave me a folder. I looked at the charts while he was out of the room. I'm dying." The rhythmic thwack of the knife stopped. Amara turned, her face softening into a mask of profound, quiet empathy. She didn't offer the hollow, "You'll be fine," that Daniel would have snapped. She didn't offer the "We'll find the best surgeon" that Rebecca would have used to outsource the problem. She simply walked over, knelt by the armchair, and took Eleanor's cold, spotted hands in hers. "How long?" Amara asked softly. "Months. Maybe weeks if the heart gives out first," Eleanor said. "My children. They don't know. They don't want to know. They're so busy building towers that they've forgotten the person who laid the foundation." "Then we make those weeks count," Amara said firmly. "You're staying here tonight. That 5th floor walk up you told the nurse you lived in?" "No way. You're sleeping in my bed. And I'm taking the couch." "I can't possibly." Quote. "Nora, I'm stubborn. It's my best and worst trait. Now, are you allergic to cilantro? Because this soup is going to have a lot of it." That night, Eleanor lay in a bed that smelled of Amara's floral shampoo, listening to the muffled sounds of the city outside. For the first time in a decade, she didn't feel like a line item on an inheritance tax form. She felt like a person. She reached for her phone on the nightstand. It was glowing with 3 missed calls from Rebecca. Eleanor dialed back. Finally, Rebecca's voice was high-pitched, echoing with the acoustics of a marble-tiled bathroom. "Mom, I'm at the gala. And I need you to talk to the curator of the Met. He's being difficult about the Whitmore Wings endowment. If you just give him a quick, remember who gave you that marble, speech, he'll fold. Rebecca, Eleanor said, staring at the peeling wallpaper of Amara's ceiling. I'm sick. I'm staying with a friend. I just wanted to hear your voice. A friend? You don't have friends. Mom, you have associates. Are you at the club? Listen, I really can't do the sentimental journey right now. The auction starts in 10 minutes. Just call the curator, okay? I'll try to swing by your place. Maybe Sunday? If the brunch doesn't run late. Bye. Quote. The silence that followed was heavier than the diagnosis. Eleanor set the phone down. In the other room, she heard the rhythmic creak of the sofa as Amara settled in. Amara, who didn't know Eleanor owned the building the Met stood on. Amara, who had given up a night's pay to make a stranger soup. Eleanor closed her eyes. A plan was beginning to form. A final, grand design. She wouldn't be the silver ghost anymore. She was going to be the storm. The contrast was a physical ache. For the next 2 weeks, Eleanor lived a double life that felt like walking between 2 different dimensions. In the mornings, she sat in Amara's cramped kitchen, the sun filtering through a cracked window, eating toast and listening to Amara talk about her dreams of opening a community kitchen. People just need a place to belong. Nora, Amara said one morning, adjusting her apron, a place where the food is hot and the judgment is cold. My grandmama always said, a full stomach opens a locked heart. Eleanor watched her, this young woman who counted pennies to pay her electric bill but spoke of feeding the world. And what's stopping you, dear? Quote. Amara laughed, a sound like wind chimes. About $500,000 and a miracle. Nora, but hey, I've got the recipes. That's a start, right? Quote. That afternoon, Eleanor took a car, not her usual black car service, but a gritty yellow cab, to Daniel's glass-walled office in Midtown. She needed to see if there was any flicker of the boys she'd raised left inside the suit. She walked past the mahogany desks and the silent assistants, her heart fluttering like a trapped bird. Daniel didn't even stand up when she entered. He was staring at 3 different monitors, his fingers flying across a keyboard. Mom, I told you I'd have the assistant call. Did you see the doctor? What did he say? Probably just high blood pressure. Everyone's stressed these days. Daniel, look at me, Eleanor said, her voice trembling. He looked up, but his eyes didn't see her. They saw a distraction. You look tired. You should go to the spa at the Pierre. I'll put it on the company card. Look, I'm in the middle of a hostile takeover. If I drop the ball on this, we lose the Chicago development. You wouldn't want the Whitmore name to slide, would you? Quote. I'm dying. Daniel, she said, the words falling like lead weights. He froze for a fraction of a second. Then his face hardened into a mask of professional concern. Don't say things like that to get attention. Mom, it's beneath you. We'll get you the best specialists. Money isn't an issue. I'll have Sarah book a suite at the Mayo Clinic for next month. Happy? Quote. I don't want a suite at the Mayo Clinic. I want you to have dinner with me. Tonight. At the house. Tonight? Impossible. I have the merger gala. Rebecca's hosting. You should come. You can wear that diamond choker Dad bought you. It'll remind everyone who the Whitmores are. Eleanor felt a coldness settle deep in her marrow. I see. She left without saying goodbye. She went straight to Rebecca's penthouse, where her daughter was surrounded by 3 stylists and a mountain of silk. Mom, you're just in time, Rebecca chirped, not even offering a hug. Does this Vera Wong make me look old money or new money? I need to look old for the board tonight. Rebecca, I need to talk to you about the inheritance. About the end. Rebecca's eyes sharpened. This was a topic she cared about. Oh, finally, Daniel and I were talking. We really think the estate should be restructured into a Tier 1 trust to avoid the new tax laws. And the jewelry. I'd like the emeralds settled in the pre-probate. It's just cleaner that way. You know? Quote. Eleanor felt a sharp pain in her chest. Not the illness, but the shattering of a mother's hope. Her daughter was already picking over her corpse before she was even cold. Is that all I am to you? A collection of emeralds and tax loopholes? Quote. Rebecca rolled her eyes. Don't be grand drama, Mom. We're just being practical. We're Whitmores. We don't do feelings. We do futures. Eleanor turned and walked out. She didn't go to her mansion. She went back to the subway, back to the neighborhood where the sirens never stopped, and walked into the diner where Amara worked. Amara saw her and immediately dropped a tray of silverware to rush over. Nora, you're shaking. Sit down. Let me get you some tea with honey. I'm fine. Amara, Eleanor whispered, leaning into the girl's warmth. I just realized I've been building the wrong kind of future. Well, Amara said, pulling out a chair. The good thing about futures is that they start every morning. You've still got tomorrow, Nora, and tomorrow is going to be beautiful. Eleanor looked at the girl, the stranger who had given her more love in 2 weeks than her children had in 20 years. Yes, Eleanor said, a steely glint returning to her eyes. Tomorrow is going to be very interesting indeed. The Whitmore mansion felt like a mausoleum. Crystal chandeliers that once illuminated the faces of presidents and titans now cast long, jagged shadows across the silent hallways. Eleanor stood in the center of the grand dining room, her hands steady for the first time in weeks. She had traded her Chanel for a simple, soft cardigan Amara had gifted her, a cheap, synthetic knit that felt warmer than any silk she had ever owned. They'll be here, Nora, Amara said, smoothing out the lace tablecloth. She had spent the afternoon helping Eleanor prepare, roasting a chicken and mashing potatoes until they were fluffy as clouds. Amara didn't ask why a lonely old woman had keys to a Fifth Avenue estate. She assumed Nora was the longtime housekeeper, finally allowed to use the dining room after the owners had passed. I hope so, dear, Eleanor said, though her heart knew better. The clock struck 7. The table was set for 4. The silver gleamed, and the scent of rosemary filled the air. 7:15. The candles began to weep wax onto the silver holders. 7:30. Eleanor's phone buzzed on the sideboard. A text from Daniel. Emergency at the Tokyo branch. Markets opened chaotic. Can't make it. Eat without me. Send me the digital files on the trust when you can. A minute later. A voice memo from Rebecca. Mom, darling, the gala moved the VIP cocktail hour up. I'm literally in the car. You understand, right? It's for the foundation. We'll do brunch Sunday. I promise. Love you. Quote. Eleanor stared at the screen until it went black. She didn't cry. The time for tears had passed years ago, buried under board meetings and boarding schools. She looked at the 2 empty chairs. Monuments to the strangers she had birthed. They aren't coming, are they? Amara asked softly, standing in the doorway with a pitcher of water. No, Eleanor said, her voice like cracking parchment. They have futures to attend to. Amara didn't offer pity. She walked over, pulled out Daniel's heavy mahogany chair, and sat down. Well, their loss. This chicken is incredible, and I'm starving. Sit down, Nora. You aren't eating alone tonight. They ate in the grand room. 2 women from worlds that should never have touched. Amara told stories of her mother's kitchen in Georgia, of the way the air felt before a summer storm, and of her dream to one day have a place where no one was ever turned away. Eleanor listened, really listened, memorizing the spark in the girl's eyes. After dinner, as the fire in the hearth faded to embers, Eleanor felt a sharp, icy tether pull at her chest. The steel magnolia was finally losing its grip on the earth. Amara, Eleanor whispered, reaching across the table. Her breath was coming in shallow, ragged hitches. Amara was around the table in a heartbeat, catching Eleanor before she could slump over. Nora? Nora, stay with me. I'm calling 911. No, Eleanor gripped her arm. Stay. Just stay. There is a letter in my coat pocket. Promise me you'll take it to the address on the envelope tomorrow. Promise me. I promise. I promise. Just breathe. Nora. Amara was crying now, fat tears landing on Eleanor's hand. You gave me a home, Eleanor whispered, her eyes drifting toward the ceiling, seeing not the crown molding, but the kindness of a stranger's face. You were the only one. Who didn't want the empire? Eleanor's grip loosened. The silence of the mansion rushed back in, heavy and absolute. Amara held the old woman's body, rocking her back and forth in the middle of $1 billion worth of art and history, sobbing for a woman she thought was a pauper, but who had died the richest woman in the world because, for 1 hour, she had been loved. The mahogany doors of the Whitmore estate's library swung open with a heavy, ominous thud. Daniel and Rebecca sat on the velvet sofa, dressed in impeccable black. They weren't crying. They were checking their watches. Daniel had a merger closing in 3 hours, and Rebecca had a flight to Milan for a private showing. Can we speed this up? Daniel snapped at the silver-haired man behind the desk. We know the drill. Everything is split 50-50. The real estate goes into the holding company, and we liquidate the smaller assets. It's what Mom would have wanted. Mr. Sterling, the family's attorney for 40 years, didn't look up. He looked tired. He looked disgusted. Actually, Daniel, your mother changed her will 72 hours before she passed. She hand-delivered the codicil via a messenger. The door opened again. Amara walked in, looking small and out of place in her best thrift store dress. Her eyes were red-rimmed from 3 days of grieving for a woman she still thought was Nora. Who is this? Rebecca asked, her voice dripping with artificial silk. Is she the new maid? We don't need a maid today. This, Mr. Sterling said, his voice ringing with a sudden, sharp authority, is Amara Johnson, the sole executor and primary beneficiary of the Whitmore estate. The silence that followed was so absolute you could hear the dust motes hitting the floor. I'm sorry. What? Daniel stood up, his face reddening. That's impossible. This girl is a stranger. My mother was senile. She wasn't in her right mind. Quote, your mother was sharper than both of you combined, Sterling countered, pulling a letter from a silk-lined envelope. She left a note for you both. Would you like to hear it? Quote, he cleared his throat and read, to my children, Daniel and Rebecca, you were always so concerned with the future and the Whitmore legacy. You treated my life like a balance sheet and my death like a scheduled transaction. You forgot that a legacy isn't built of stone and steel. It's built of the warmth we leave in others. I met a girl who saw a dying old woman and didn't see a liability. She saw a human being. She gave me the one thing your billions couldn't buy, her time. Since you were so busy with your mergers and galas, I decided to give my fortune to someone who actually knows how to spend it on kindness. Rebecca let out a strangled gasp. The jewelry? The Hamptons house? The Fifth Avenue penthouse? Quote, all transferred to a charitable trust, Sterling said, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. Amara, you are now the chairwoman of a $3 billion fund. The only thing Daniel and Rebecca receive is the legal minimum required by the 1994 trust agreement, which, after their recent expansions and debts, barely covers their car leases. Daniel turned to Amara, his teeth bared. You trapped her. You manipulated an old woman. We'll sue you until you're back in the gutter you came from. Amara stood tall. She didn't look at the money. She didn't look at the lawyers. She looked at the two people who had let their mother die alone for the sake of a calendar. I didn't even know her last name, Amara said softly, her voice steady and full of a power she didn't know she possessed. I thought she was a lonely grandmother who had no one. And I was right. She did have no one. She had shadows. She had vultures. But she didn't have children. Amara walked toward the door, stopping only to look at the portrait of Eleanor that hung over the mantel. You can sue me, Amara said, looking back at the siblings. But you'll be fighting a woman who has nothing to lose and a woman who gave me everything to gain. I'm not keeping a cent of this for a penthouse or a private jet. 2 years later, The building on 42nd Street was no longer a cold office tower. It was a sprawling, sun-drenched facility with a garden on the roof and a kitchen that smelled of garlic, rosemary, and slow-simmered hope. A large brass plaque at the entrance read, "Eleanor's home, for the parents the world forgot." Inside, elderly men and women sat in mismatched, comfortable armchairs, sharing stories. There were no white hospital walls here. There were books, music, and young volunteers who actually sat and listened. Amara stood in the center of the dining hall, wearing a simple apron over a nice dress. She watched as a young man helped an elderly woman to her seat, laughing at one of her old jokes. She felt a hand on her shoulder. Not a physical hand, but a warmth, like a soft cardigan draped over her spirit. She looked at a small framed photo on the wall near the kitchen. It was Nora, sitting in that grocery store aisle, smiling not like a titan, but like a woman who had finally been found. The steel magnolia had finally bloomed, and in its shade, no one would ever have to feel forgotten again.